Hi, my name is Candace, and this is part 2 of my testimony of how I came to Jesus, coming from the cult of Hollywood, Scientology, and heavily occult influenced New Age background. So if you have not seen part 1, I highly suggest that you view part 1 before you watch this, or you might be a little lost. And just a quick, sincere thank you to anybody who has taken the time to watch part 1 and is now here for part 2. Thank you. It's amazing that that people find this and that they care. But I know it's true because after my experience, I watched a lot of testimonies on YouTube. Which before that, it was nothing I ever even searched for. I didn't even know that was there. So I was amazed at the honesty and just the inspiration that came through so many people's testimonies. It really helped affirm what I had experienced, and it just helped me. So another reason I felt called to do the same, because you just never know who might really gain something from your experience and your story and your sharing. So part 2, here we go. I believe I left off in my acting class. I was now in my close to mid-20s, and it had been several years of acting class work and going to the Celebrity Center, heavily involved in Scientology. I was aware somewhat of the backlash and the negative things about Scientology, but I never felt that I mean, they call it a religion. I knew that that was mostly so that they would be tax exempt, and I didn't call Scientology my religion. I didn't call myself a Scientologist. I was really interested in self-help because I felt that I was totally broken and my family was totally broken, and I was desperately searching for a way to pull myself up by my bootstraps and achieve my dream, which was to be a successful working actor in Hollywood. Now I had spent nearly 10 years in this acting class, over 10 years pursuing this dream and this thing, and I had only gotten further and further away from it. And again, I'm not going to take the time in this video to go into detail. That may be a separate video if I feel somehow called to share the specifics of that. But I felt like I was dying at this time. And now, if you've ever had this experience, I didn't have a physical ailment. I wasn't diagnosed with some terminal illness, but all I can describe it, the only way that I feel I can describe it is that I felt that I was dying, like my life force was leaving me. My life was so bleak. I had been pursuing my dreams, and now I found myself in a prison that I did not know how to escape. And it went on like this for a while, until one day I literally heard, I want to say a voice, but really it's more like a thought. It's like a thought came into my head that was not my own and said, it was like a whisper. I sometimes like to imagine it was like an angel whispering over my shoulder and said, "You will never find God on this path." And I remember when I heard it, it was like, I totally forgot about God. I haven't been thinking about God. I thought pursuing my dream, this was God given to me, and that was how I was pursuing God, was because I was pursuing my dream and what I thought my soul was calling me to do. And yet I had no joy. I had no enthusiasm anymore. I was a mess. I was totally empty. I was totally depleted. And for some reason, just that one thing, "You will never find God on this path," kind of woke me up. And I knew that I had to leave the class. And it was difficult. It was harder than leaving Scientology. Scientology was not a problem. The class was basically, it was a microcosm of what Scientology was. So it was challenging to leave the class. Again, I'm going to spare you the details, maybe for another video. But when I came out of there, it was kind of like, if somebody's in prison for 10 years and then they come out to the real world, it's a little scary. You feel lost and don't know what to do next. And that was kind of how I felt. But I knew I needed to bring God, what I thought was God, spirituality, back into my life. And so I did still pursue acting here and there. And I also I really started to self-examine, like what had happened for these last 10 years. And I realized that I was able to get so lost and so deep and so stuck because I wasn't really questioning who I was following. And this sort of mantra came in my head, who do you follow? And I had this grand idea that I was going to write a one-woman show, and the whole message was going to be about getting people to really examine, who do you follow? Because when you follow anybody, you can follow them off a cliff and to your demise, to your own destruction, because it's of indoctrination or whatever. And I did later go on to write a one-woman show, but it didn't exactly happen like that. So just to create context, so I left the class. I'm still kind of, pursuing acting, but I'm not sure which direction I want to go. I still very much listen to my alternative radio shows and stuff. I worked a job for a long time in LA as a food delivery driver for high-end restaurants that didn't have their own delivery service. So if you're an LA person, like a Mr. Chow or Kate Manalini's or, some like fancy restaurant, and we delivered mostly to the rich and famous. And so I spent a lot of evenings in my car, and so I would have hours and hours of shows and talks and podcasts and just things of all this alternative information. So I was sort of getting this education in, just thinking alternatively, looking at the world alternatively. So I had this truther through line, and I'm saying this because they all kind of converge. And then of course I have this Scientology strange spiritual experience, and now I'm just heavily on the trail of hungry for spirituality. And of course I was always in the self-help vein. So even while I was doing Scientology, I read Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle and anything basically that Oprah would have on her show, that kind of thing. And I read autobiography of a yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda, and he's this Indian guru that came to America, and gosh, I don't know, sometime in the early to mid 1900s, and introduced a lot of these Eastern philosophies. And he has his people, followers, have founded several centers around Southern California called the Self-Realization Center. So I started going to Self-Realization Center, and they'd have these, services by the monks, and I was getting interested in learning a little bit about Kriya Yoga or Kriya meditation, which is like a breath meditation. And then around this time, the movie What the Bleep Do We Know came out. So if for anybody who's not aware, it was a sort of a documentary. Marlee Matlin, the deaf actress, was the central character in it. And it was really a documentary about science meets spirituality. And it blew up. I mean, it was incredibly well done and fascinating. And a lot of people really loved it, myself included. I mean, it just blew my mind because it felt like it was everything that I'd ever been interested in or been reading about or hearing about. Now here it was coming, like converging science and spirituality, and it seemed so mainstream and so logical, and I was just so turned on by this movie. So I did some research, and I learned that the people that produced this movie were students of somebody called Ramtha. So if you don't know who Ramtha is a very ancient spirit channeled by a woman named J.Z. Knight. J.Z. Knight claims that in the 1970s, she was visited by this spiritual entity that called himself Ramtha, and sort of started to teach her all of this ancient wisdom. And she channels him, and she actually has a school in Yale, Washington, called the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. So I was just totally taken and turned on by this because of how I thought and what I was attracted to. So, and just a funny aside, because if my good friend watches this, which I'm sure she will, I was living with her at the time. She was my roommate. And I remember I sent away for like a complimentary DVD about J.Z. Knight and Ramtha and the School of Enlightenment, because I wanted to go, of course. And we watched it together. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're falling for this. She seems like she's drunk when she's channeling." And, and I was like, maybe. But I'm the kind of person that I want to know. I want to go and I want to know for myself. I mean, I'm just so open-minded that I just want to know. I want to have the experience. I can't let somebody else just tell me all the time, because there's too much of that in life. So it was funny. So I didn't make it to the week long yet, but they had an introductory weekend in Arizona. So I went out there by myself, and it's like, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a few of their teachers there to get you to go to the longer retreat at the school. And one of the speakers there was Dr. Joe Dispenza. Now, again, if you know anything about this field of, the power of intention, the power of thought, all that kind of stuff, Dr. Joe is pretty big in this arena now. And this was like close to 15 years ago. I had never heard of him, but he was a great speaker and very fascinating. But I just think a lot of people who know him now might be interested to know that he got his beginnings with Ramtha. So Dr. Joe's written, he's got like 3 major bestseller books, and he says he's a neuroscientist, and he claims that he healed his body, major back injury from a bike accident, all with sort of the power of his thoughts and rewiring his brain to think a certain way. And he say neurons that wire together fire together, and it's basically all about mastery over the self, not unlike Scientology and all these other things. But it's very attractive to people who are in this mindset. So he was one of the teachers, and I was just like, oh yeah, definitely, this is totally up my alley. And when I get a chance, I am going to go to that Ramtha School of Enlightenment and learn this ancient wisdom. I just want to be filled with wisdom. I'm just such a passionate seeker of knowledge. I want to know all the knowledge and have all the wisdom and understand what this life is really about. So shortly after I came back from that trip, and I just always remember it in my mind as these two things linked, although I could say now maybe what I think it was. But anyway, I had some weird sleep paralysis experiences happen again, and they had not been happening up to this point. I mean, since like my teens, I think I mentioned it in the last video. So it's very vivid, and I remember it to this day. And it was one night, I'm sleeping, and I'm having a dream. And in the dream, it was very mundane. I was walking in a parking lot, like a Home Depot parking lot, from the store to my car with like a shopping cart to my car. And I was stopped by the sound of the most angelic, beautiful music I could ever describe. I mean, I remember in my dream, I'm holding the shopping cart and I stop, and it was just like, I was just taken with this music. And all of a sudden, there's this clown, the scariest looking clown you ever could imagine, riding on a bicycle, and the music is coming from his bike. And it was like, he looked like the clown from It, the movie It. And it just frightened me so badly that it shocked me awake. I mean, I literally shot awake in my bed. And I've had a few nightmares in my life, but it's not common. And I don't remember anything like that ever happening. And I just remember it still so vividly because it was so scary. So I was shocked awake in my bed. It was dark. It was the middle of the night. There was nobody else in my bed or my room. And for whatever reason, this particular night, I had long pillows. One of my pillows was like in front of my face, like I was holding it as I was sleeping, which wasn't usual, but this is just the way it was. So it was like blocking my face. But my eyes were open. I shot awake. And as I was just trying to collect myself, I was barely awakened. Then I hear this like on the other side of the pillow, like something just was breathing heavily, but it like blew out. And now I'm like, did I just really hear? And before I could even finish that thought, I hear it again. Now my whole body is frozen with fear because I know for sure that there's something on the other side of my pillow, and I can't even imagine what it is. Or maybe I can, because I'm lying there. And I think what happens in sleep paralysis, or these experiences sometimes, is that we think that we're awake in the physical body, but it's like maybe we wake up in the astral realm, and so that's why we can't move our bodies, although we feel that we're physical. So maybe it's something like that. So although I couldn't see with my physical eyes, in my mind's eye, I knew, however this was possible, I knew that there was 2 entities on the other side of the pillow. One was tall, one was short. And the best way to describe it is like one was a gray alien and one was a reptilian. And I really was never into UFOs and stuff. I can't say I wasn't exposed to that information because, of course, I listened to Coast to Coast and stuff. So I had heard this stuff, and I was interested in David Icke. I'd heard about reptilians. So Maybe that's just why my mind went there, or maybe that's really what was standing there. I can't tell you the difference, but I just, for whatever reason, knew intuitively that there were two beings, and that's what they looked like. And then it was like it took all my willpower to move, but somehow I moved my head up. Now, I didn't have a headboard, I just had a wall. So I moved my head up so that my eyes could see on my headboard, I mean on my wall, where a headboard would be above my head, and I saw a shadow of these long, excuse me, these long, creepy fingers like a gray alien, like going like this over my head. And it was like, it was telling me, it was manipulating my mind. That, honest to God, this is what happened. And then that's the last thing that I remember. I don't know if I fell asleep or, obviously at some point I fell asleep, but that's the last thing that I remember until the next morning. But I remember that dream, obviously. The next morning I remembered it, and I remember it to this day. And in fact, I was shooting an independent project during that time, and I remember the next day I had a scene to film, and I was telling the director about it, because we had become friends, and she was like, "Oh, you're crazy," Just like, I'm just telling you. I don't know if it was a dream or what, but that it was crazy, and it really freaked me out. So, but somehow I felt like, in retrospect, that maybe it was linked to opening that door of just going to the Ramtha introductory workshop. Like, if you've ever been to Disneyland and been on the Haunted Mansion, you know that when you get off that ride, there's a ghost that follows you. I was like that, like in real life, something followed me home or so. I don't know. So that happened, and it seemed like it opened a door to something new. Or maybe not, I don't know. It just reawakened something. So here I am, I'm doing this spirituality thing, and I'm sort of doing acting. I'm going to fast forward. I meet my husband, which was a wonderful thing. And one of the things that attracted me to my husband is he was one of the first people I met under the age of 60 at this time who had seen the What the Bleep Do We Know movie. And not only had he seen it, was equally knowledgeable, I'd say, about things that I was knowledgeable about, but maybe not as interested, if that even makes sense. I don't know. We were kind of coming at from different aspects, but he was aware enough and interested enough that he saw the movie. And not only that, he's from Washington, and he said, "Oh, I'll take you to that retreat. I know where Yelm, Washington is." And we did end up going together like 6 months later. It was crazy. And it was cool. We did things like remote viewing and sending and receiving telepathically. I remember there was a guy there who had been a long time student of Ramtha. Imagine how much time he spent doing this, but he had a deck of cards where he would pick up a card with the face down so he couldn't see it, and he would concentrate really hard, and he could intuit or visualize what card it was. And so he came there, and it's like a pony show, showing us like, "Oh, look what you can do with your mind." But when you're interested in this kind of stuff, I mean, it's awesome. And they had very interesting, intelligent teachers. They have an ex-priest there named Mihal Ledwith, I think was his name, and he spoke for several hours about some really fascinating things, and it was right up my alley. So I'm not going to say like it was horrible. It was awesome. And honestly, Jay-Z, she was the least of the retreat. Like, she wasn't really a huge part of the retreat, and I didn't know what to think. Is channeling real? I think that it's possible, but what I think it is now as opposed to what I thought it was then, I don't know. But anyway, it was an interesting retreat. And I learned a form of meditation there that I pursued for a while. But in the end, what it really came down to is there's another New Age philosophy about how you create your own reality, that you are God. Not God with a big G, but you're a piece of God, and therefore you should be able to create like God and master your own reality. And I guess I just really believe this deep down, because every place I went, that's what I was being told, and it sort of resonated. So I'm sitting in my car, obviously, because it's the only place I can be to be away from my family to be able to do this. So anyway, that's where I was in my headspace. Gosh, I wrote notes because I knew I was going to ramble a little bit. I want to incorporate important sort of key points in a chronological order, but I don't want to get lost in the minutia. So Okay, so yeah, Ramtha, and met my husband, and I did do a one-woman show, and it was about my family, about my turbulent upbringing, and I only wrote it up to the point basically where I came to Scientology, and I think I performed this. It was like 30 minutes or whatever, and doing a one-woman show is not easy, especially, this was not something that came easily to me. I really wanted to be a film actor, not a stage actor. But I think part of what brought me to acting is I just want to communicate. I want to express. If I experience something, then I want to talk about it. And so it just felt natural that, oh my gosh, I just kind of had this crazy escape from this class, and oh my gosh, I was really part of a cult when I think about it. And how did this, all this introspection and retrospective thinking brought me to want to write this show. And it was very therapeutic to a degree. And I'll never forget, after I performed it, there was that empty feeling again. And I, thank goodness, had the foresight to say, I don't have another 10 years of stamina in me to give my everything to this show, which is what I knew it would take. And I had just met who was my husband by this time, and we knew we wanted to have kids and stuff, and I just knew I couldn't do both, and I didn't want to lose any more of my life, because I felt I gave up a lot of my life for something that gave very little back to me. So that was the real turning point when I officially said, I'm done with acting, I'm done with a life as a performer, this is not my path. And that was really hard, because I was one of these people who felt I always knew what I wanted to do, and I put all my eggs in that basket. And it felt like the ultimate shedding of letting go and saying, okay, I don't know who I am. So I was just a waitress for a while. I just was, a waitress and delivery driver, and that's what I was doing. But I knew the next thing I would pursue would be something in the more alternative. And I was really also interested, still am, in health and how we take care of ourselves. And I also knew instinctively that I needed to be healed. What I was really searching for was healing. In fact, that's why I got into acting too. A lot of actors, they're wounded, and they find this avenue as a way to express themselves and heal themselves. But it backfired for me. So I knew that I needed healing. So my husband is a musician, and I think he was the first one to make the suggestion, like, why don't you get involved in or check out sound healing? And I was like, sound healing? What is that? I've never even heard of such a thing. I don't think it exists. But it did, and it does, of course. And I found some interesting teachers, had some interesting experiences, maybe spent about a year or so doing some self-exploration, just having fun with my friends. I had a room in my house and got a sound bed, sort of a massage table with some speakers underneath it, and I was just playing and having fun, but I started to get more and more interested and thought, I think I really want to do something with this. And then I found this school in Malibu, California, the top of a hill way up there in Malibu Canyon, called Tamado. And Tamado is Japanese, and it means way of the soul. And Tamado was created by a French musician turned acupuncturist named Fabien Maman, a very interesting character. And he was a jazz musician, and the way he tells it is he was traveling with his musicians, and one time they were touring in Japan, and this was his first introduction to Japanese style acupuncture. Japanese acupuncture, the needle doesn't go as deep as in Chinese acupuncture. So he had this experience, and he was totally taken with acupuncture. And he said, I needed a way to keep my fellow musicians healthy. So then he became an acupuncturist. So he was a musician and an acupuncturist. And then he pioneered the use of tuning forks, which is just vibration, using those on acupuncture points instead of needles. And then he created a whole system where he sees the body and the whole meridian system and acupuncture points as like a musical instrument. And he basically transposed the chromatic music scale to the body, to the acupuncture points, the meridian. I mean, it's an ingenious creation. And I was totally, again, taken with him and what he had created, and his counterpart, her name is Therese. She brought in, they incorporated color work, color therapy. She's really very nature-based, so it was really about revering nature, and they had what they called fairy essences. So they're like essential oils, but you didn't use them on the body, you used them in the etheric field. And again, if you're not aware of familiar with this kind of talk or this kind of stuff, I mean, the whole thing was about the spiritual body. So you have the physical body, but then outside of the physical body, you have an etheric body, and then the astral body or the emotional body, and then the mental body, and, it goes on and on. And again, just so up my alley. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is where I'm supposed to be. And we learned Qigong, and we'd be out there in nature, and it was just beautiful. And we'd sit in, it was in their house and living room, just with these big windows overlooking. You just see sky and birds flying and the ocean in the distance and beautiful clouds. And we'd be sitting there learning about all this amazing stuff about spirituality and these deep esoteric concepts and how it applies to the physical body. And I mean, I was done. I was sold. That was it. So I started to take the courses to become a practitioner, because ultimately what this was work for healing. And that here I was. I knew I needed healing, and I thought this is what I've been looking for. And it was beautiful, and there was just so much. There's just so much to it. So I did the practitioner's course, and maybe that was over the period of a year, because they had, like week-long sessions here and there. And then the culmination was in Switzerland. So I went to Switzerland, which was amazing, for 2 weeks, and got tested and, did all of that stuff. You have initiations and things like that. And now I was a practitioner, and I was going to do my best to create a business out of a room in my duplex with my husband and see how it went. Now, at the same time, excuse me, I need a drink. Or shortly after, I should say, I became pregnant with my first child. And I didn't know how, it was going to be interesting. I just knew I wasn't going to be able to do my regular menial job. So it was also really important that, I made something of this sound healing thing, although it's obviously not a very mainstream career choice. So it's interesting. And I think it was kind of around this time I maybe started having some weird sleep disturbances again. So I had that one very vivid one that I just recounted after Ramtha. And I maybe had a couple of other little things, but it wasn't consistent. So there was a break. But then when I got into the Tamado, the way I remember it is that these few other instances, and some of them I will go into, were coupled around this time, which in retrospect I go, when I got into the Tamado. So now I have to jump into something else, and I'm going to, again, try not to go too deeply into this. And I feel like if anybody watching this can be like, this is really your life? This really happened? Yes. So I'm pregnant, and I'm doing the sound healing. And LA is a funny place. You meet somebody that's a friend of a friend of a friend, and one thing after another, and crazy things happen. So I'm doing this healing work, and my good friend had a friend who was also an actor who was also doing healing work. And somehow she linked us up, and we were like, oh, we'll do an exchange. I'll do my healing work on you, and you do your healing thing on me. So she came over to my place, and we were doing that, and her healing technique or whatever had something to do with, like, okay, pick a problem that's really bothering you. And, I don't even remember whatever. But what was really bothering me at the time is we had 2 cats and a dog in a duplex, and we're about to have a baby. And one of our cats was really, really anciently old. And it was actually not my cat. It came with my husband from his former relationship. And the cat was causing a lot of problems, and it was kind of driving me crazy. So this is what I shared with her. So after we did our session or whatever, she said, oh my gosh, I have a friend who's works on a reality show, and it's about animals, and you might be perfect. They're casting right now. And I'm not going to give the name of the show. I have to be careful. I've never talked about this online, because they make you sign a crazy contract. And even though this was a long time ago, I just want to be careful not to divulge too much information. But it was a show about cats specifically, I'll say that. And it's on a network that's about animals. So one thing led to another. And again, I won't go into the specifics, but we found ourselves on this show. Now, yes, I lived in Hollywood, and yes, I want to be an actor. No, I had never participated in a reality show before. And even though I know, like, reality shows, not total reality. My experience really shocked even me, and opened up my eyes to just how crazy and sort of sick and twisted, not just Hollywood, but media and television in general and everything can be, and how easy it is to be deceived with the use of media. I mean, it's very difficult to know what is real in this world, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. Another reason you need your true north, because it's easy to get it's easy to get off track. So gosh, how can I tell this part without, I feel like I'm rushing, because I really don't want to make a 2-hour-long video, and I want to get to the meat. I mean, there's a lot of meat here, but I mean, I want to get to Jesus. So, okay, so we do this reality show, and it's just, it's like the Dog Whisperer, but for cats. So the people come to your house, and there was 3 different days of filming, and there's a writer, and there's several producers, and there's the sound people, and even for a little, for a reality show, whatever, it's just like a big production. And there was like 3 full days of shooting in our place. And the idea is like, oh, your cat's having a problem, like, I'm gonna fix it because I'm the cat whisperer. And it was kind of a joke. I had never seen the show. My husband and I, we certainly didn't watch this show, and we didn't watch much of reality shows or anything. So comes in, and he like sifts his hand through a dirty litter box. I think you're supposed to be like, oh, he really likes cats, because he would do I don't know what you're supposed to think. Anyway, they go through your life, and if you've never participated in a reality show, they don't have a director, and you don't have a script, like you're not told what to say, but the producers totally run the show. Like, they don't like go, oh, here, this is your house and your life, what do you want to talk about? They from the very beginning were really interested, were their words, in my healing thing that I was trying to do. And I was a little concerned, like, oh, they're gonna poke fun at me, or they're gonna make fun of me and make me look silly because it's like a woo-woo thing. But I thought, it's harmless, it'll be fine, I can handle that. But I didn't think anything beyond that, because once again, I learned that I'm pretty naive, I guess. So anyway, the guy comes, and we shoot the 3 days, and it was fine. And they chose to only focus on the one cat. They didn't want to focus on the fact that we had a second cat or a dog, and that was completely their choice. I mean, everything was their doing. They sent us to a vet, and they gave you like a camera. You're supposed to like film footage for them, and I don't know. I can't get lost in the details. But you had to film a lot of stuff, but they told you what to focus on, what they needed, even if you were filming something for yourself. So it was very heavily guided. It wasn't like, this is just a snapshot of our real life, kind of thing. So anyway, the show airs, and the timing of the airing of the show coincided with the birth of my baby, basically. It was a really hot summer in LA. I had my daughter on August 6th, and I think the show aired like later that week. And again, this is totally like, I don't need to go into this, but it was a very difficult, horrific birth. So I was like, my husband and I were just in shock from that. And then a couple days later, I get an email, not even thinking about the show. We totally forgot about the show, that it was even on. We never even saw it on regular TV. I got an email that said, I hope you die in a fire, or something like that. And I was like, what is going on? And then that was just the first thing that happened. And then it was a snowball. I was getting phone calls with these horrible messages. I had a Facebook business page at the time. The people were, like asking me questions about, what happened to the cat, and all the, making all these accusations. I was trying to do my sound healing business. So I had it was on Yelp, and people were giving fake Yelp reviews. I mean, it just blew up into this crazy thing. The reality TV show aired, and the way that they spun it, they made it was just so cliche. It was like, oh, this horrible pants wearing, bullying, I don't want to say bad words, but like bitch of a woman wants to get rid of her husband's beloved cat because it used to belong to his ex-girlfriend, and she's just so jealous, and this poor cat, she's gonna kill it. They didn't even say that we had a plan for the cat to go to my mother's house. I mean, it was just, the whole thing was just a mess. And I had no recourse because you're not, you like basically sign a contract that says you can't say anything. And how could I have recourse anyway? I mean, these people are famous and on a TV show, and I'm just a person like with my real name and real business, and the whole thing got totally trashed. And I don't even know how to talk about this without just getting too involved in it. So I'm just going to skim over a lot, but it was so bad that here I'm a person that's like trying to, do something positive, connected to spirituality and something that I believe in to help other people and help myself, and, just really connected in this beautiful work. And then this thing happens. And I mean, it felt like the whole universe was telling me that you're a piece of crap. That actually, now I just need to back up for a second. So if you're somebody like me who believes in what this new age religion is telling you, that you create your own reality, and that you get everything you deserve, and gosh, I almost can't even think now because I get emotional just talking about all this. But basically that you create your reality, and if something's happening to you, it's because you created it. You are 100% responsible. Nobody else has any responsibility. So what I got from this is that, oh my goodness, the universe. I mean, the universe, through all of these people, many, many, many people from all around the world, by the way, wherever this show aired, were mostly telling me that I was a horrible person, that I wasn't fit to be a mother, and how sorry they felt for my child, because I was obviously pregnant on the show. So everybody knew that I was having a baby, and attacking my ability to even be a mother, and that I was a horrible wife, and they felt sorry for my husband, and shame on me for taking people's money and being a charlatan, and it was so crazy. So it was like, okay, the most important things in my life, my marriage, the fact that I was just entering motherhood with a brand new baby, and my career, that it wasn't a career because I had barely gotten off the ground, but it was my soul's passion. It was what I really believed I was supposed to be doing. All three of those things completely trashed and stepped on. And I'm a sensitive person. I mean, I did not take this stuff lightly. I blindsided, couldn't believe that it was happening. And then I tried to reason with people, because I think, I'm a reasonable person and people must be reasonable. I'm trying to respond to people's comments on my Facebook page, and it's just the insanity. And then the network calls me and tells me, like, radio silence, like, don't, just stop responding, pull your page down, it'll blow over in a day or two, like, just, let it go. Well, it didn't blow over in a day or two. I mean, this persisted, not to this intensity, but it persisted for like 2 years. But anyway, so there was a period of time where I was like, okay, well, the universe must be telling me that I should sell all my instruments, and doing the sound healing thing is not what I should be doing, because clearly I thought my intentions were pure, but the universe is showing me that I'm a horrible person. So I don't want to be a horrible person in the world. I need to listen to the universe, is where my thoughts really went. And then I was not going to call my Tamado teachers. I was still a Tamado practitioner at this time and associated with my teachers. But somebody had called them and said, oh, do you know who is representing you, this horrible person? Do you know her? And so my teacher Therese calls me and is like, what is, you really pissed off the cat world. And she was a cat person, so she could sort of understand that cat mentality. But she did give me a good piece of advice. She said, whatever money you got from the show, which was not a lot, by the way, and people like thought that I got rich or something, which, what a joke, off a reality show, was not a lot of money, but it was a lot of money to me, who just had a baby and just had to stop working. It was a lot of money. It was $1,600. It actually was the exact amount that it cost to give birth to my baby, which is why when it came, I thought it was a sign from the universe that, oh, wow, the universe is really watching out for me. So see, that's one of the problems when you give all your faith and trust to this impersonal idea of a universe. It's like, you're like, a yo-yo. You know, you're like a puppet on a string. It's like, the universe loves me, the universe hates me. Oh my gosh, I'm a crazy person because I don't know which one. The signs, you know. I think there's even something in the Bible. It's like, we follow signs, you're going to be deceived. And it's true. It's like, stop looking for signs, people. Just look for Jesus. I don't know if I can even air this video. This is like getting ridiculous. Sorry if you're, I really want to get this out, and then going back into it is just like, I lose my train of thought because all the emotion comes up. So here I am again, just totally deflated and deconstructed and torn apart, and I'm at a crossroads because here I thought I found a new direction after giving up my lifelong dream of being an actor, and now boom, it's like I shouldn't be doing this either. I've invested thousands of dollars. I've made maybe a few $100s actually doing it, but I've invested thousands of dollars and so much time and sweat, and why is this happening? And you know, this is like bullying that people kill themselves over. And not to mention, I just had a baby, and I had a 3rd-degree tear, and my baby's skull was crushed with forceps when she was being ripped out of me, and it was one of the most difficult times in my life, and pretty difficult for my husband too. And I thought, no, this isn't right. These people through the internet, watching TV because they got nothing better to do, are going to tell me what kind of person I'm being. What kind of person are they being? And there's something that my teacher said, my spiritual Tamado teacher, in that she did give me the good advice about, did I totally lose track? She gave me the advice to donate whatever money that I received from doing the show, just to energetically separate myself from it. And I knew when she said that instantly, yes, that's right. I can part with the $1,600. I would give much more than that for this to go away, because this is like totally messed up. So I took the money and donated it to a cat shelter. And I think that the woman didn't even act grateful, because I think she knew who I was, and just, I was like, yeah, you should rot in hell, is like what people thought. So crazy, just the animosity and the vitriol that is so present in people, so ready to come out over nonsense, over something that wasn't even real. I mean, half of what the show portrayed wasn't even true. But you couldn't tell people that because they're just, you know, and mainly this story is important is because it was really a microcosm for what happens in the whole world. Is that there's so much that people are fighting about and bickering and killing each other over that isn't even real. It's not even the truth. Anyway, so I started to grow a backbone because I was so low. And basically this was the thought that I had that took me out of it, is I thought, okay, if the universe, if I create my reality and somehow something I've done warrants this kind of hatred and animosity and, you know, vitriol towards me, then I have no choice but to accept that this is what the universe wants me to know and think of myself. And if I believe that, then I don't want to be alive, because what's the point? I should kill myself because, well, there you go. There you have it. The universe just told me that I'm a total piece of garbage, and there's no fixing it. I mean, you know, it's done. And I didn't even know what I did. And this is the message I'm getting. So when I was able, thank God, to somehow frame it that way, I realized, no, this is ridiculous. And I had to dig deep for some real self-respect and self-love, and just defend myself internally in a way that I never have before. So it ultimately, again, you know, it made me stronger somehow, but man, it was a really tough thing to get through. So I didn't get rid of my instruments and all of that, but I really wasn't able, I never wanted to have a stranger come to my house again, because now I was always suspicious if somebody was contacting me because they saw me on that show. And it was like, I don't want to put my family in peril. I don't know what kind of crazy person might show up to my house. So I basically couldn't really do it anymore. And that was frustrating and depressing. But I had a newborn baby and certainly was busy. But this ultimately had a lot to do with why my husband and I ended up moving out of LA, and we moved to where he's from in Washington. And so then that brought in a whole new phase of my life. Now I'm still connected with Tamado, and I'm still doing the Tamado stuff. I'm still connected to it. I have the silks, and I have the tuning forks and charts and my sound table and instruments. And because my husband's a musician, he and I would do group sound healings together in a specific practice called Kodatama that we learned from Tamado. But we didn't have a lot of free time to do this, but it was definitely still something part of what we were doing. But I moved to Washington, and I saw myself doing more of that kind of workshop thing in the future. And so I had this idea, you know what, I should really get my yoga teacher certification. I'm not a big yoga person because I grew up as a dancer, so I way rather wanted to go to a dance class than a yoga class. I didn't really get yoga. But as I got older and yoga has become like so, our culture is being permeated with it, I started to see like, oh, you know, a lot of people go to yoga. A lot of people go to yoga just for exercise, but a lot of people go to yoga because they like the spiritual aspect. And that, to me, in my mind, was one of the hurdles that I had as a sound healer is, how do I approach this really spiritual philosophy with everyday people that have never been exposed to it or just don't really understand it. That was a hurdle for me. So I thought, what a great in if I could introduce this to people in yoga studios. They're going to be much more open. There's going to be much more likelihood that they'll be open to this than if I went to a gym, for example. So this was what got me thinking I want to become a yoga practitioner. Not that I was like some great yogi or anything. But I found what is a really reputable and great school up here. I did start taking yoga. I actually got into yoga during my pregnancy because I couldn't go to dance class and the gym and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. So I started going to yoga, and I did the yoga teacher certification with this particular school. It's 200 hours. But this was a pretty extensive training. I mean, they spread it out over 6 months. At the end, they had a week-long retreat. And I really learned so much that I didn't know that yoga was about. So in yoga, there's 8 limbs because it's not just the physical. Traditionally is a very small aspect of what yoga is. A large part of it is meditation. It's worship. It's very connected to gods. It's very religious, actually. And I read the Yoga Sutras. I was just introduced to all of this stuff and aspects of yoga that I didn't know, but I loved it. I mean, again, this is right up my alley. I just love all this information and history and esoteric wisdom. So I got really into it. And on that last week of the week-long retreat, an Indian elder came up, and they even did a sweat lodge, which I had never done a sweat lodge, and that was a very like crazy intense experience. And I was just in it. And I felt like I was having a lot of like enlightened and opening experiences. I just felt so, it's like, as long as I'm learning, I'm sort of this information junkie. So it felt good. But now remember, there's still this part of me that is always researching, and there's still this like truther, I want to get to the truth of bottom of everything that I can aspect. So in some of my research, I started to come across this idea that the Kabbalah, for example, which is something that Tamado introduced me to. It's an ancient, it's basically the esoteric aspect of Judaism. So it's what the mystical Jews study. There's the, what is it called? The Zohar and the Kabbalah. And this is what you see Madonna and a lot of these celebrities into. But we were learning some very esoteric insights. And I came across some videos and information that said, beware Kabbalah, this is Luciferianism, like sort of shrouded Luciferianism. And I was kind of like, I wonder. And now I'm not religious. I never even really believed in Jesus. So it wasn't even like, oh, this is terrible. It was just like, I want to know what it is. I want to know what it is that I purport to understand. I want to know. I want to know what's really at its core. Like if I'm promoting something or I'm practicing something, I want to know what I'm really practicing, even though I didn't. But in my mind, I thought, so when I saw that, it just made me, I wonder if there's any truth to that. And then also, my teacher, Fabian, I know he mentioned on occasion Madame Blavatsky and Alice Bailey. These were some, people that, it wasn't like it was heavily included in our teaching as Tamado practitioners, but he definitely pulled from these people. And if you know anything about Madame Blavatsky, I mean, she has a very checkered history. She's in line with Manly P. Hall and the Wisdom of the Ages and the Theosophical Society, and Alice Bailey and her husband. Alice Bailey has these weird books. I've tried to read them. She's like channeling a Tibetan monk, and she and her husband actually opened something called Lucifer's Trust, and then there was so much backlash that they changed it to Lucis Trust. So they're it wasn't even that hidden that they were Luciferians. So when I saw that connection was very real, that kind of bothered me. Like my teachers have suggested we read certain books on Alice Bailey, and Alice Bailey actually is one who talked a lot about the 7 rays, which is the whole color aspect of the Tamado work. 7 rays of the colors of the rainbow. And my teachers never told me this, and here I was learning this, and this really disturbed me a little bit, just because I felt like, why isn't it more upfront, like where all this information is coming from? So I remember sending my teacher, Therese, a quick email and just saying, hey, is this true? Or, I heard, what do you think of this? And her response was like, oh no, I never heard that. And that was it. It was like, no, like, where did you hear that? Or her response was so short that it made me suspect. I thought, one of two things. One, she definitely knows and doesn't want to tell me, why, if you're teaching something and you feel that it's right and true, why wouldn't you want to tell me? Or 2, she really has no idea. And I don't even know which is worse. It's like you've been studying, practicing, and teaching something for over 20 years and you don't even know about the origins or what is said about some of the people and information that you're connected to. So that started kind of putting a little crack in my faith in Tamado. And now I think I found them in 2011, and now it's like, it's after 2016. So a good handful of years. Oh gosh, forgive me if this is just rambling on. It's a long story. I might stop it somewhere and start a part 3, just so it's not a huge long video. So we'll see where and when and how I might be able to do that. Maybe I should do that now. Maybe I should just stop it here and I'll start a fresh video. So there started to become cracks in my faith in the Tamado. And similarly, I started to, for maybe the first time, see that, yoga has connections, who are all these gods that they revere in yoga. I used to think, it's just the many aspects of the one God, and it's really beautiful how they portray all these different aspects, and it's just a different way of the same thing. It's the many paths lead to the one God. And my father's Indian. He's a Muslim, though he's not Hindu, but still, my father's of a different culture. And hey, you got to show respect and understanding of different cultures. Like, don't be so closed-minded, is where I'm coming from. But I definitely came across information where it's like, no, maybe these gods that the Hindu religion worships really were all real gods with a little g, or demons, or archons, or there's many names. Maybe even the fallen angels. Who knows what, depending on what era you're looking at. And this ties into the ancient aliens and the Anunnaki. I mean, all of this could be the same thing viewed from different cultures. So it just got me thinking, but it didn't make me run from Tamado or make me run from yoga at this point. It just got me thinking. So I'm going to stop there because it's almost an hour long. It's the end of part 2, and bless you if you made it through that rambling video. I prayed before I did this that the Lord would guide my words and help me convey what really needed to be conveyed. So I hope that happened. I'm going to end it here, and I'll pick right up with part 3. Thanks for watching.